Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
All right, we're all fired up and ready to land this thing. It's our 8 o'clock hour. If you missed our first 3 hours, that's right, we put in 4 hours every morning for you. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and download it because you will have missed quite a bit. And we want you to be up to speed on all of the inside jokes we like to share, especially when it comes to Jane Goodall and the unfortunate obituary that I set up for her there. And
it's all right.
I appreciate you bearing with me on that one. Carrie Lucas is here all morning. She is the president of the entire Independent Women's Forum empire.
Well, thank you.
Because there's a lot of
growing. Always.
It is, and incredibly influential and important, and it's always good to talk with you. Thank you for being here. Joining us right now, friend of this program, Alex Pfeiffer. He was our buddy there when he was at the Daily Caller covering politics in the White House, and then he went and worked for the Trump White House in the communications shop, and now he's just enjoying life. Alex, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
I'm enjoying life, Larry. Thanks for having me on.
As well you should. You're Alex Pfeiffer, darn it. Listen, from your perspective, we just spoke with Byron York. I'm rooting for my team, so I say that up front. I recognize that I have a bias here, but it sure seems like when it comes to government shutdowns, the Republicans seem to be on message and on point, and the Democrats have a much tougher explanation here when it comes to this one, or am I reading it wrong?
No, you're not reading it wrong. It's because they telegraphed that they were going to shut it down. You know, there was an Axios story on September 10th saying that Democrats are increasingly embracing the prospect of a shutdown. You know, they've been saying for weeks in advance to the vote that they didn't want to fund President Trump's budget. And they made all these excuses. They said, "Oh, we don't want to fund authoritarianism," or whatever they want to say. And so they telegraphed they were going to do this, and then they did it. And now they're like, "Whoa, why is Donald Trump shutting down the government?"
Right.
You know, they took America hostage in order to please Rachel Maddow. I don't think that's sustainable, and eventually they're going to have to vote for the clean CR and get us out of this.
Alex, their message, of course, is that they're trying to help Americans who are about to see a huge increase in their health insurance premiums. Republicans' message is, well, yeah, but a lot of that money that you're demanding is going to go to illegal immigrants. And also, you're trying to extend money that was supposed to just be temporary during the pandemic. If there's something broken about health insurance, that should be a separate conversation. Well, who's winning the war of words there as everybody points the fingers at each other and says that the other side is lying?
Well, I think Republicans are, because Democrats have lied too transparently. They have said in recent days that it's completely, blatantly false to say that any illegal immigrants in the U.S. are benefiting from Medicaid. In New York, Chuck Schumer's own state, they have a Medicaid program that illegal immigrant seniors can enroll in. So it's transparently the case that illegal immigrants can get Medicaid. The solutions they want in their package would increase subsidies for illegal immigrant health care by $200 billion. And this is done by repealing all these different measures in the working families tax cut. So that's what they're doing. And I think another reason they're losing this messaging war is, you know, when Chris Murphy went on Stephen Colbert the other day to talk about not funding the budget, he wasn't talking about healthcare reform. He was just bashing Trump as a fascist. So Democrats at the last minute decided to make this about healthcare, but that has not been their message in the lead up to this. And the really tough thing they're in right now is, you know, Chuck Schumer, I think, recognizes deep down that a shutdown is bad. He used to vote for clean CRs and talk about how shutdowns are damaging and you shouldn't hold the country hostage for your political objectives. But he's facing a lot of pressure from his left flank. The left-wing group Move On is now, starting a campaign to encourage Democrats not to vote for clean CR. So he's kind of between a rock and a hard place.
Well, Alex, one of the things that's interesting is on the administration side, you have Russell Voigt, who has another card to play. They can start shutting down and are starting to shut down things that they say are wasteful spending, so they can reallocate money where it's most needed. I don't know how this gets better for Democrats, but you're right that backing out will seem like a cave. So how do you see this playing out, or what do you think their hope is that how the messaging would go for them?
I think the way Democrats get out of this is, look, J.D. Vance yesterday from the podium said we are we're willing to negotiate and talk about different healthcare reforms with Democrats, but we need them to fund the government first. And I assume that's what Schumer, the Democrats, might take as a win. They would say, okay, we've got an agreement to talk about something. That's maybe the way they say face out of this. But either way, they're going to be taking lumps of coal, and they're going to get hit by AOC and their left flank, and that's the problem their party's dealing with.
So, Alex, how long do you think this is going to take? Because, it seems like Republican strategy here is to have a vote or a couple of votes every day in the Senate and see how long some of the Democrats who are either facing reelection or are in more sane and rational states are willing to hold out before they start caving and coming over and voting to reopen the government. Well, what's that game of chicken going to look like?
If I had to bet, I'd say early next week. I think there's not going to be a vote today because Yom Kippur. So the next vote is tomorrow. Maybe they'll get some more Democrats going along. I think they had 3 on the vote Tuesday night. Mm-hmm. So vote by vote they'll get more, but I could see this lasting a few more days. And yeah, look, when you mentioned potential layoffs that Russ Vought would oversee, that is because we need to keep essential services going. Troops right now are working without pay. Our Coast Guard is working without pay. Lots of TSA agents, air traffic controllers working without pay. And Ruben Gallego, one of the Democrats that voted for a shutdown, he's still getting his paycheck. And he said he had to get his paycheck because he has mouths to feed, and so he can't do without a paycheck. But all these other people apparently don't matter.
That's hilarious. And if you had to identify some Democrat senators who might be on the brink of tipping here, whose names would you name?
Well, I would say ones in, swing states with difficult elections, John Ossoff, someone like that. I think, it's hard politically for them to keep, holding out and shutting down the government.
Okay. And you think, and what are they looking at right now? They need 7?
I think so. That's a ballpark. I would say around that what they need. It's going to happen. There's no way in which, Schumer just holds off and decides to, the layoffs will be blood on his hands. Democrats own this. Even the headlines in places like the Washington Post make clear that Democrats voted down the funding necessary to keep the government open. So, unless Schumer and his colleagues want to own layoffs and want to own news stories about, air traffic controllers and troops struggling because they're not getting paid, the votes are going to come.
Alex, you might hope that some senators from Virginia and Maryland would care about what's happening to federal workers here in the Beltway, but that's probably too much to hope, right?
Yeah, I hope I would hope that Abigail, Spanberger would care about men in girls' bathrooms as well. But
how foolish of us. Yeah.
Fascinating. All right, Alex Pfeiffer, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it, and we'll keep watching this story as it develops, and it does affect people in this area, so we are keen to make sure you get as much information about where it's going and as soon as possible. That's why you need to keep it here all day long, all the way through Derek Hunter and, of course, the great one, Mark Levin. It's 8:15.